All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Wake Up to Your Life Magic. My name is Dr. Helmut Lucero-Love, and I'm so excited to be talking yet again about how we can elevate our leadership through the kinds of conversations we have. And you can check out and learn more about the book and the podcast at www.wakeuptoyourlifemagic.com. And today we have with us Don Moran, or it's Moran, or no, Baron Moran. Is that
Marone,
right?
close enough.
Marone.
Marone.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I did it right. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
I did that to myself. Okay. Hey Don, how are you?
Good, man. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you sitting? Where are you coming in from?
So I live in Kelmy, Georgia. If the audience is familiar, it's probably like, depending on who you ask, maybe 30, 25 minutes like north of the city limits of Atlanta. Uh, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. That we're
Yeah.
both in Atlanta and both having this
Yeah.
chat. I'm excited about today because today we're going to be delving into all some of my very favorite things: AI, um, spirituality, and politics. Yay! All the things.
hmm
It's going to be a lot of fun.
hmm
So let's
Yeah.
first just talk off by letting the audience know
hmm
what you do. What's your business?
hmm
Who do you serve?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of a AI automation agency called Highland Tech, and what we do is we solve the problem of repetitive and mundane tasks with something called AI agents. If you're not familiar with AI agents, think of them as digital workers that will automate some, most, or in some cases, all of some business process, right? And so, um, in the world today, most people are familiar with AI assistants like ChatGPT, or you talk to it, it talks to you back, right? So it's your assistant that works along with you. These instead, the AI agents can work on your behalf, and in some cases, work completely with no human input. And so this is really the biggest impact or potential impact technology that's on the playing field today for businesses. And what we do is we build them. And so we build them in low code, secure environments so we can reduce the cost and the time to build so that they're within reach for small, medium businesses. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, a little bit for the audience, actually, Todd and I connected because I was actually through a friend. We were talking about running for Atlanta mayor, but I am
Mm-hmm.
obsessed with how we can use AI for good, how we can
Mm-hmm.
use AI to make government more productive and also social services. So we'll get a little bit to that as Don and I talk through, but that's a
Mm-hmm.
very exciting area as we think about the upside of AI.
Mm-hmm.
Don, talk a little bit about maybe a story, a moment in your life where you really changed, uh, where you
Mm-hmm.
uh, where you learned something about yourself that's noteworthy, where people can just understand a little bit of a change in your life that was monumental, and our audience can fall a little bit in love with you.
Yeah. Um, okay. I'll give you something. Hopefully they like it. So there was a time in my life when I had a change of career and I was moving from, let's call it like a one level of a sales role into another level where I was having to call on like huge companies.
Mm,
And it was in that moment where I was selling the same way and I was falling on my face for like months and a lot of cold calling, a lot of rejection. And I at that point had been in sales for, like 8 years or something, right? So this is my professional career. And so I had to admit to myself that I wasn't as good as I thought that I was. And I went back, paid for my own sales training, reframed the way I sell completely, and ended up becoming a top global seller and sales leader within an industry that I serve. All because that I was willing to self-reflect, to self-correct, and that's a motto that I use even till today. And one of the things that happened to me in that time, it was painful because I think the one thing people hate more than losing time and money is change. Is that I was willing to change and admit that I'm always a work in progress. And there was a post I put out on LinkedIn the other day that kind of takes us home, where it's like most people, when they say turn lemons to lemonade, is basically take a bad situation, make it good. Well, I would also encourage people to go find more lemons. So they go find difficult things to put them in the situation so that way they can grow and get better. And that way they're prepared for almost anything that comes at them. Right. And so that's a small example. that I think was easy to explain within a short period of time. But my impression is you never really know like your potential unless you put yourself in difficult situations or admit that you're a work in progress. So that's my story.
No, that's great. I think a lot of us don't realize that, right? The cost of success is suffering and failure. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the reality. You have to do that part first. And it's
Mhm.
hard when you're so used to being the greatest at something, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden you have to change and do the next thing. Um,
Mhm.
but that's how you do it. And so that's
Mhm.
encouragement for any of you all who are out there struggling right now. It's something new, something you
Mhm.
haven't done, which could also be and
Mhm.
will be AI for a while. It's a new horizon for us.
Mhm.
As we think about what you're doing in the world of AI and your business,
Mhm.
Don, what would you say
Mhm.
is the vision that you're pursuing in the world that you're hoping to create with what you're approaching?
Yeah, I think as an early entrepreneur, I think it might be easy. It might seem easy to create a vision because you're starting and it's fresh and you're optimistic and you could run with that vision. But I think it's a lot of what I focus on is just building a business that pays me enough to live the life that I want is like stage one. But I think that only lasts so long, and that there's more meaning that's behind it. And so as someone that's really into the AI space, I start to think about these like meta conversations, something that you and I spoke about with spirituality. That's pretty cool, right? So one of the things that what we solve for is repetitive and mundane tasks. That's what I said earlier in the call. And we become, accustomed as humans over the last 50, 80 years or whatever, taking in these jobs that never really existed before. Maybe one time accountants weren't a thing, lawyers weren't a thing, even doctors weren't a thing in some cases, right? But medical doctors. And so as we look now at repetitive tasks that can be replaced by AI, there's one train of thought that says, wow, this is scary. It's going to replace jobs. But I see it as one thing that allows people to elevate themselves to a place they never could before, not just professionally, but spiritually. Imagine a world where you just talk to this AI assistant and it goes and does these things that you spent hours in front of a computer typing a keyboard. And instead of looking down, you can now look up at the person in front of you. Imagine dinners where people aren't looking at their phones anymore and they can finally connect. And they are less connected to the technology. They'll be more connected, but they probably will feel less connected because they have to transact with it less and they can transact more naturally. My hope would be is that the further we get away from that feeling that we have to be connected and we're looking at phones, the more we get away from that, hopefully the closer we can get back to the beauty of humanity, which is connecting spiritually, emotionally, earthly bound creatures. That's pretty cool to me. Now, I don't know how that's going to play out, right? We might end up plugged in the matrix and it's complete opposite. But I think what I'm hopeful for is I get out of spreadsheets and people get out of Word docs and they have these agents that go and do these things where it allows them to stay on a creative level and then therefore will help people rise to their potential. Um, that's my hope, right? Is that happens. But I think there's also a real conversation around the overuse of it. And there's been studies out that show the overuse of it actually hinders growth rather than helps. And I think that's a real topic, right? So we use it as a tool to get ahead, to remove the things that we don't want, but we need to fill it with things that are good for us. And so that's really up to people. People are 100% in control of I think, of their happiness. Um, and I mean, at least in this example, right? If they remove the things they didn't want to do, now it's up to them to go do art. There was actually a podcast I listened to. I love it. I should send you the link. Actually, it talks very much about this space, and is with a neuroscientist, and she says that uh, most humans think we have five senses, but they actually found we have 34. And the human brain has been reduced in some ways. I can't explain why, right? To not to tap into those other senses. And so what happens is, well, to me, that shows me there's so much more to be felt and to be known and to explore. But when we're stuck with our heads down in front of computers and cell phones, it's really hard to do that, right? You're kind of plugged in. So my hope is the positive future would be we get less plugged in. We might be more plugged in, but we feel less plugged in. So that way we can become human again.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting topic because, to your point, um, what it begs, I think what it's begging us to do is to be most human to navigate the way we use it. Meaning, there's sort of the spiritual question of why are we here? There's the moral
Mhm,
question, right, of what is it right to do with this and what isn't. Um,
mhm,
and then there's the connection, which is what you got to, which is the whole point of a lot of these things would be to have more connection, right? But what we found
mhm,
classically in our pursuit of wealth, we tend to replace time for connection with more ways to create wealth, right?
mhm,
And so
mhm,
we kind of assume, okay, yeah, you're already doing those things, yeah. So now I expect more time of you as an employee, or I expect more time of you. Um, so it's going to wind up asking us a lot of moral questions. Um, but in the same token, I think about like how AI can help illiteracy go away. Everyone should know how to read. If you have an AI app that's helpful, learns how you learn, and can teach
mhm,
you, right, where maybe a teacher would struggle. Are there ways that AI is going to help us with mental health challenges, right, where maybe it's too expensive for you to be able to afford enough cognitive behavioral therapy to work through that issue, but maybe that's different. Maybe that's
mhm,
changed in a world where we have AI.
mhm,
So there are a lot of applications that could apply to things that we assume today aren't possible because you would have to have a person there to help someone. That maybe
mhm,
AI will be able to help the humans, meaning more of the humans that honestly struggle with the very basics of, do they love themselves, right? Do they love themselves
mhm,
enough to pursue more?
mhm,
We know there are a lot of people who don't pursue a lot of things in life, but a lot of times it's because they're hurt people, and we know hurt
mhm,
people often struggle to pursue
mhm,
pursue their greatest self, right? So
mhm,
how AI can help us to free the consciousness from that
mhm,
perspective is something I get really excited about.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and it's there's so much of a meta conversation around this. Like I don't know. I think humanity is its worst enemy sometimes. Like we get in the way of our ability to grow. And but there's also the side of the coin that like in your I'm sure your belief too, that love like conquers so much of complexity, and but unfortunately a lot of things are driven by fear and greed. And you look at this stuff that's happening now, you know, there's a fear. The US, right? I just saw something that last week, the US has owns like 69% of the world's AI infrastructure, which is insane. It's like we are so far ahead of anyone else. We don't know what China's doing probably exactly, but according to those metrics, we're blowing past anybody, which maybe it's great for us, but what does that mean for the world? The reality is much bigger than even Atlanta. How this is impacting things, of course, but it's like, okay, if that's the case, maybe society, community wise, or whatever, the U.S. is doing pretty good. But I feel like the love like branches much more than just what happens within our city or in our communities. And so I do worry sometimes that, our fear or greed within the US, and that's not us, obviously, but the powers that be are creating a very long tail where we become basically the owner of so much um, so much around AI, which is a huge advantage to us, but it's also others can see it as a risk. I just don't know how that's going to end up, right? And
Yeah.
I think there has to be some democratization of it. And one could trust the U.S. On this front, but it's just I'd feel better inside if that was somehow dispersed a little bit more evenly. And I have
Gotcha.
zero control of that, right? But that's just some thoughts there.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate that. I try to remember, and I try to encourage people. I do this in the book, where that fear and greed move fast, love and sharing move slow, but they're stronger. And so, like what we're going through, right? We're going to go through the fast wake of the greed, right? The get rid of resources, the like, let me leverage up my profit margin, right? It's going to introduce new problems and challenges. But I really do believe that the love end of this, meaning what AI can be used for, that we never thought you could, right? And I'm going to go back to this example of the cognitive behavioral therapy we're talking, right? And I've used a specific example. I have a child of mine that is struggling with some issues, and I actually asked AI, how can I say this in a way that they can hear it, given this, this, and this, and it was absolutely effective.
Right.
The way that it modeled the conversation made me more effective. And I sat there and I thought, you know what? Oh my gosh, what if I could tell AI that this person's struggling with this? Please only interact in these ways
Yeah.
until they get better, right? So the applications for positive outcomes are great. And I'm very hopeful that this might be the opportunity for America to fulfill its ultimate manifest destiny, right?
Mhm.
To actually use AI. If we can
Mhm.
solve problems and ills in society
Mhm.
using AI and share those
Mhm.
with other countries that would
Yeah.
never have had that before,
Mhm.
that's pretty incredible, you know?
Yeah, that's a good outlook, right? I think that's definitely what I left you with before you said that was a much more pessimistic view of like, well, if we have the power, that means we have a lot of responsibility, as the superhero movies would say. But then you have the flip side that with that power, with that responsibility, we can do so many things. And they've already predicted that there's opportunity to cure diseases we never had the chance to do, to provide education at scale that the world has never seen, healthcare at ways that the world has never
Mhm.
seen. Imagine, I mean, so many people have cell phones. I think there's like somehow the equivalent of almost equivalent of cell phones to people in the world. If you were to give something like that, like a remote nurse that could help people even self-diagnose through their issue, to even see if they need healthcare without waiting in long lines to be seen by a doctor, what would that mean for the world, right? And so like there is so many things that are good, that could come from this. And your example that you gave is spot on, right? You used an AI assistant to help you through kind of this last mile stretch to solve your problem. One of the things though to think about is to not fully solve it in the beginning, so we don't lose our creativity and our ability to think is super important. What they found is like people that have used it with a crutch, I said some of this earlier, not just a crutch for knowledge, but a crutch for emotional support, has been very difficult to handle, right? They've actually, when they went with, if you're familiar with ChatGPT 5, which is the newest model that came from OpenAI, they decommissioned, I forget the word that they use, the other models, and they had huge backlash from a very small community, but the problems were big enough of that people that they opened the old models back up. And what happened was is that people became so comfortable with GPT-4 and its versions of 4 that and because they opened up memory, that it knew so much about them that people actually had relationships with it, right? And this actually, early signs of this came with a company called Character AI, where little kids will have conversations with Spider-Man or their favorite superhero, and their best friend becomes this AI. It's almost like the movie Her all over again. So there's
Mhm.
an aspect where from anywhere you can have the best friend that you ever wanted, which is super positive. And that best friend could tell you what's wrong with you. If you're sick, if you're having a bad day, they're going to be there for you. But on the other side, there's also where that could replace the human connection, which would be, to the earlier point you made, if you think about social media, Zuckerberg would say that it was meant to make us more connected, but it did the opposite. So it's super important, I think, that the audience here, or anyone, as they use this, they use it sparingly. And if they do, they can do so much good with it, so much good with it. Not just from a business standpoint, they can be more productive. That might be fairly obvious, but just in the examples that you used, to help you with something that could be there for you to solve your problem wherever, whatever you need. And I recently went through some personal things in my life, and I consulted ChatGPT, and it was like amazing. Like I asked the price of maybe a therapist or something at the time, but it was there. It was attentive. It was data driven. It was fantastic. So that's incredible, right? I mean, think about how many people are on the edge of their life. They don't feel love, and they can bounce back, maybe have small bounce backs to that, but hopefully they find it more in Jesus Christ, or something else a little bit more depth driven. But yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually, and if you think about transformation, right, which
Mhm.
is really so connected with the concepts of salvation, and
Mhm.
becoming your higher self, the Christ within,
Mhm.
the those other topics. So much of that has to do
Mhm.
with breaking through limiting beliefs that you have, right? And if you think
Mhm.
about it, AI will be able to support people in those journeys as well. So
Mhm.
there's so many things that we haven't sat and gone like,
Mhm.
oh wow. But to your point, it means the orchestrators of the
Mhm.
technology, the
Mhm.
people who are actually thinking through this, actually have to think long term. They have to think
Mhm.
about the moral implications, the spiritual implications, the connection implications for everything we're
Mhm.
creating. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely a wake up call to us as humans in this era to realize that our spirituality, our morality, our connectedness is going to be defining as to
Mhm.
how this comes on the stage. uh,
Yep.
yeah. So
Mhm.
which gets to the next part, Don, which is just
Mhm.
how does spirituality, morality, how do these things play into business in your
Mhm.
perspective? And
Mhm.
we talk so often. As someone in the LGBT community,
Mhm.
people have worked so hard to be out at work about that, but yet spirituality,
Mhm.
morality, these issues, which are pretty fundamental to the human experience. Why am I here? We
Mhm.
closet those things a lot in corporations. We closet them in politics. We closet these things that are much deeper and very, very human. What are your perspective on these topics?
As it relates to AI, or
Well,
the
I would say
intro.
first of all, as it relates to business, I would say
Yeah.
up front.
Yeah, I mean, some people, I think it's leadership's perspective on how they balance business and personal. A lot of people say it's not personal, it's just business. I don't know how much I believe in that. I mean, to me, it's like I spend so much of my life at work, it is personal. So, I mean, there's certain things you can't take offense to, maybe because that if you have for what one of the hard things is that layoffs, right? So if you know someone that's gotten laid off recently, that's obviously personal to them. It affects their finances, affects maybe their household dynamics or the attitude. It's going to be personal. The business will say it's just business, it's just numbers. And business they're only in operation to make money. That's it. And so there's a part where I understand from the business side where they don't dip too much into these things because they got a business to run. But you also see examples where leadership will step up when times get tough. Some people will say we refuse layoffs, or we instead of laying off people, the CEO is going to take a huge pay cut, or the C-suite, or whatever, or we'll make concessions somewhere else because we value our people. Or I think what's even better is they could, adopt what I like the idea, and this is getting a little bit into AI, is that if they use AI to remove repetitive mundane tasks from people, either to replace some work or all of a work, but they take the talent that they have and they must repurpose them. They don't just lay them off. This is what's happening across tech space right now. They're just laying people off because they know AI can do, customer service or tech support, right? I just don't think that's when I think morally, I feel like that's just a wrong thing to do, unless they come out with universal basic income or some way to support these people. I just think morally, I'm not calling the shots. These people make a lot more money than me. I just think there's some opportunity there to say, hey, if we are, we're for profit. And this is the thing I think about too, like how much money is enough money for companies, right? And I think what they're doing is not to stuff it in their pockets. I really think that a lot of these companies are trying to get the cash flow they need in order to run this next AI era that's very cash intensive. The build data centers. I mean, I just found out this week that the town I grew up in is going to get a massive data center, and everybody's upset about that, you know. But on the one side, it's like, well, we want to be on the forefront of AI, and we're going to drop these data centers wherever we need to. It could be good for economic growth. You create jobs, and there's opportunities with that. And the other side is, it's, again, this change. People don't want a giant data center in their backyard and their farmland and disrupt the community that they've known and grown in for generations, right? And so I think that's from the moral side. I think from the spiritual side, I would say, you know, it kind of goes, maybe it's a little bit of church and state, a little bit. I think that people, we're the US, right? People should have the freedom to exercise what spirituality they want. That's why we're here. We value free speech, and we value yeah, individualism on the Hofstede score for the United States is very high. And so I don't see any reason why there would be any barrier there. I haven't seen many examples of that where it has been in the corporate world, where spirituality becomes an issue. Now, whether or not it's within like if you're practicing, if you're praying on the side or something versus like I'm bringing it into a boardroom meeting and using that maybe as a decision framework, I have not seen that, but I'd be curious if you've seen that, if that's been something that's come up for you. Usually, even in the business world, I've seen that kept separate, pretty often. Where like we don't really talk about that. It's like here's the data, we make a decision based on that, and then we move on. So that'd be my take on this between moral,
Yeah.
spiritual within the business workplace.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Couple thoughts on that. So it's so interesting, right? Because I noticed this dichotomy. We've come to this place in our modern culture where we say, hey, business is for making money, right? And it's so interesting because originally business was created to love one another.
Mhm.
Like you would write like money. I write about this in the book. Money is love energy. Like what used to be like you'd go grow tomatoes. I would like,
Yeah.
go shoot a deer, right? And like, prepare it. And then we'd exchange that, right? I was loving myself and taking care of my family. You were loving your family, taking care of yours. We exchanged goods. Hey man, that's so awesome. Thanks for the tomatoes. Oh my God, I love this
Mhm.
deer. And we're good,
Mhm.
right? We just sort of like shared and we were loving ourselves, our families, and one another. And then we figured out ways to mass it up, right? And then take over each other's land. And like that was sort of like
Mhm.
the vehicle. And now we're
Mhm.
getting so efficient with it, right? It's to your point when we say, oh my gosh, I'm going to slash these people, right? My brother's in Silicon Valley, and he's like, Helmut, the estimates, right, for what we're going to be cutting are so big.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it begs the question, well, why are we in business? Oh, well, it's to make money for the shareholders. Well, we're the shareholders, by the way, right? The
Mhm.
silent owners of modern day plantations, right? Who get our payments out, right? And then have this
Mhm.
money.
Mhm.
And we're all asking ourselves, well, what's the point? I mean, isn't the point for us all to share it together and love one another? Like at the end of
Yeah.
the day, right? If you have these massive money making machines and these few people with all the money, which is what we're stepping into with the largest wealth gap growing and growing, what's
Mhm.
the point? That's a moral question, right? That's like a spiritual, moral question. Why are we doing this? Why are
Mhm.
we here? Um,
Mhm.
and
Oh, yeah.
the other comment I was going to make is, I think that the reality is finding the common thread in religions, coming in faiths.
Mhm.
We're scared to do it, but
Mhm.
it's the love word. Love is the
Mhm.
common thread in all these things, and it's
Mhm.
exactly what we need. It's exactly
Mhm.
what we're going to need to navigate this. I think we're
Mhm.
going to need to
Agreed.
understand, and it's like whether I'm Christian or Buddhist or even 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 someone who's an atheist, we can almost all actually no, we can all agree that love is what we want to practice to one another. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's hard, right? It's like it's I think if I was looking from a business perspective, like I'll use an easier analogy. You ever go to a restaurant and you go to one and it's so just ran great. You go there, have a good experience, everybody's happy, everybody's in a good mood versus another one you go to on the opposite end of the spectrum where it's all falling apart. You can tell the waiter or the person that's helping you is just kind of stressed out, kitchen's falling apart. I I would wager that the difference between those two spectrums is you got an excellent leader, and the other one you got a leader that's bringing that energy, right? You got the excellent leader that's all love, supportive, boosts self esteem. is willing to lend a hand, isn't too big to jump in to get their hands dirty when they need to go back and cook because they lost a cook. The other route is maybe it's a manager that's just kind of cracking the whip, metaphorical whip, and just say, go get to work. Like, no, you can't take time off. It's a toxic work environment, right? It's very difficult to grow love here, I feel like, when you're in that place versus this place. But a lot of times and I don't necessarily believe this. I'm just kind of rephrasing. I believe what I'm said so far, but what I'm about to say, I don't necessarily believe this, but I've seen it, is that we tend to promote these people because they're high performers in the short term. But to your point, the love is like the long term. This person might not shoot fantastic numbers right away, but they're playing a game that will create a stable business because it's based on kindness or love, right? Or just who they are as a person versus this other one that's like the shareholders love them because they're like all about the numbers. They're showing them how they have control of the situation. They're showing them that their people don't matter. It's all about money. And this other one is when times get tough, they're sticking up for their employee that couldn't show up to work because they had to pick up their kid late for the third time because it was a personal issue. So like you look as the business owner, you just want to make money. You don't want the backstory of why this happened, this happened. You're just like, just get it done. So that's why this person seems to be more appealing, but they can break down, in this case, businesses, put them on their knees, in a way that's very disruptible. That actually, there was a situation in my professional life where this kind of thing happened. And they brought in that kind of leadership that completely just, you know, let's just say dismantle the sales organization inadvertently. I know that wasn't their intention, but they did that because they want to come in with the hammer to say, this is how I'm going to run it. This is what we're going to do, whatever they, okay, great. Sounds good. But the other side, when it was a little bit more laissez-faire culture, I will admit they could use a lot more structure on the sales side. At least for people like me, I would work until midnight without asking questions. I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm like, you got me, I got you. We're in this together because I know that you care about me and my self-esteem and my life over here. You were just a number. And so I think if we did get to that love, I think it's incumbent upon like leaders, maybe even yourself, like leading Atlanta, to show that like you're going to get better, your business is going to improve if we're leading with this one common denominator across
Yeah,
whatever religion, anything.
yeah. So to your point, so in corporate, going to that example, right?
Hmm.
It 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 is going to increasingly and even more importantly be a fact that if I'm in a loving environment, I can feel it. I will give my time. I will give
Hmm.
more. And even if an AI decision's made, I'm going to give my creativity to the next thing, right? If I believe this place, I'm just a number. We see it all the time. We have so many friends that are just a number where they are. They don't love their job. They're not working with their
Hmm.
heart, right? And they're just waiting for the next layoff. So it impacts your bottom line, right? The leadership you have there.
Hmm.
But the point you're making, and what I kind of had the vision of as you were saying that is, like,
Hmm.
what's the point of government? We kind of go back to the point of business. The point of business is making money, but it's also to love one another. The point of
Hmm.
government is to make sure we facilitate loving each other and that we're stable and protected, right?
Hmm.
And you think about it, and so many of our political leaders are not leading us in such a
Hmm.
way that we have the
Hmm.
comfort that everyone's safe and that we're going to make it through the economic challenges of
Hmm.
AI. I think it's a sort of hole in the
Hmm.
dialogue, and it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take
Hmm.
vision, and then some tech smarts. So let's talk about AI, because
Yeah.
I really wanted to give the audience a chance. Don and I had some conversation around areas that he just thought AI could be applied, as we were kind of looking at different aspects of society that we kind of look at AI in government. And I want to put you on the spot because I didn't tell you we'd review any of them.
No
But
problem.
if there were a couple of them that you thought were worth sharing or highlighting, that would be, I think, really, really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I would start at a high level, right? So I actually did an AI 101 for my chamber recently. We had like 80 businesses in attendance, and I put a lot of thought into like what should these people know besides like here's how to prompt your chatbot. You know what I mean? Like what's the best stuff I can give them? And one is breaking down from how people consume this, it's mostly in two forms. It's your AI assistants and your AI agents. When you think about the AI assistant side, um, what is it? ChatGPT has 700 million active users a week. That's insane. That's in one product. That's not Meta AI. That's not Gemini. All these Claude, Grok. Have you ever heard of these? All these other AI assistants. And so there is a thought that, well, we need to know how to speak to them. And I did a two truths, one lie. And one of the ones was that the lie is that prompting them is knowing how to prompt them, knowing how to talk to it, where you give it instructions, is essential. I don't think that's true, because what happened, I mean, it might be right now, but I don't think in maybe in the next year it's going to be true, because the memory of these things are getting better. They're getting
Mm,
smarter, and they will
mhm.
become your assistant. And this will be the most used application software you ever use. And so that's most applicable to most people listening here, because 8 out of 10 people use them. Actually, 8 out of 10 people bring them their own tools to work, which is an issue, from a privacy standpoint, because they can dump whatever they want inside their personal bot. And so if I think about that most people, when they take something away from this, thinking about that, that's 80% of the audience that uses these things at least, would be, um, you know, how can I use these to get ahead, you know? And when I've spoken from a business perspective, is that a lot of it is exploring things like let's say from leadership, leadership buy-in. Within leadership buy-in, you would shut down all the consumer grade URLs because it would safeguard data use, data privacy. So you would want to move
Mm,
to like a business application, Microsoft Copilot, or a Google Gemini for Business, because they're already built within your data. But beyond that, it's you're tasking department managers to drive use cases within their individual contributing team members. So let's say you're head of HR director, whatever, within your HR generalist, specialist, recruiter, whatever, you give them use cases where they can use these assistants to feel the productivity. Um, and also to give them opportunity to explore and be creative, and do this over the course of a month. And as you meet with them, either one-on-ones or team meetings, you're asking them, how did it go? And from there, you're able to get a sense of the value that you can then curate up to your leadership discussions, to say, yes, Sally Sue use this AI assistant and then save 30 hours a week. So that's cool. But on the flip side, these tools are getting easier for people to make their AI agents, which is the bigger opportunity. Now, not what we build at Highland Tech. We build much more sophisticated engines, AI agents. But these tools today allow anyone with natural language, no code, to make a light version where they could really help their department. So you think about someone listening that says, hey, this AI stuff's coming. I don't really know what to do with my job. Um, I don't know what to do with my future. You can find out how to use these light AI agents. There's YouTube's available, like Microsoft Copilot. And then think about what you could solve within your own department. Go to solve that, bring that to your boss and say, hey, check this out. I think I just saved our department like 50 hours a week or whatever. Like, you don't think that who's going to get promoted, or at least has the best shot, that has high impact, won't be that person versus the other person that's just waiting around for something to happen for them. Life's not waiting. So when we think about now economics, right? Like, we broaden this out to all of Atlanta. What does that mean? I think that they need that message to understand that they are empowered with the tools, everyone generally, to do something more than what they've done before. Because when you use these things, either you're making something more efficient, and I said this on someone else's podcast last week, you're either making something more efficient that exists, or you're doing something new that you couldn't have done before. Both present opportunities for people, right, to do something about it. But a lot of people, they just need to know that exists. Give me, help me figure out how to use it, which is fairly easy because they're very intuitive, and get the self-esteem to know that they matter and that what they're building could really make a big impact into their lives professionally. Because professionally, going back to what I said before, to me there's a connection, there's a parallel to personal life. If I'm making good money, I have good health insurance, I can then provide for my family, and if my household's good, everything else is good. And that might have been very high level. helmet more than you were looking for. But
No, no,
I think that's how I would think about it.
no, that's a great. There's that element of uh, let's be real, the need to become entrepreneurial and self-driven, right,
Mhm.
to get through AI to find what your next thing is that you're going to be creating, whether that's
Mhm.
in the company and getting promoted, right, or that's then
Yeah.
going out on your own and starting something. um, it's going to be that initiation still truly at the heart of your success, right? But I think we talked about some things like 311, right? And looking at a
Mhm.
co-pilot in that department, or cities taking in permits, right? And the
Mhm.
triaging of that, looking for waste, fraud, and abuse, and having uh, abuse, and having
Abuse.
agents that are looking for that within the data, right?
Mhm.
There are a lot of applications of AI
Mhm.
within government that can become
Mhm.
extremely helpful,
Yeah.
or social services. I think we talked about some of the areas of social services that you could look at.
Mhm. Yeah, the
So
311 is a
there's
great example for sure. You could leverage a massive knowledge base and imagine where you have a government that's not like DMV-esque, where you can get
mm,
help right away and the person's always available. So having a voice agent that you can call through to Atlanta to ask general questions uh, would be massive. And there's so much opportunity to do that, to where you can streamline that experience. Because if we have those good experiences to remove the repetitive mundane, that makes people more inclined to, you know want to continue to move here and to have ease of use. I don't want to create friction for the community. I want to create something that's seamless where they have a good experience. I mean, Atlanta residents are customers, in my opinion, of the government, Atlanta government, right? So the idea is that if we give them tools and products that they can use to provide a better experience, that maybe people will move here, they'll buy more land or buy more assets, they'll open more businesses, and those little experiences add up. And so they might seem little, but for someone that needs to call in for permitting, actually, there was a sign business that we were working with in the early stages of the business where they have to go through permitting data in order to understand, you know, uh, what limitations exist with their sign installations. And so there's a lot of obviously like legal content around the permitting that prevents them or whatever to install signs. And instead of combing through all this data, you just make one of these agents that can do that for you by your request, to say like, hey, I want to install this at this address. This is what we're trying to do, can we do it? As opposed to, think about someone calling on a phone tree, has to sit there for who knows how long, and whether they get help or not is still a question mark.
Yep. And so as we think about it, there's an opportunity, and I guess I really would communicate this more than anything, right? There's an
Mhm.
opportunity for not only us to, yes, reduce costs within, you know,
Mhm.
the city of Atlanta, or any city, or
Mhm.
any government, right, through the use of AI. There's an
Mhm.
also, and it's really important, there's an opportunity to innovate right now. There's an
Mhm.
opportunity to bring in private sector, right, into public, and create
Mhm.
solutions that you can then sell into other places. And I think that's going to be really interesting, whether it's education, whether it's in transportation, every area, every public sector area has an opportunity for innovation with private, that we may not have been thinking about before. And that'll be very defining for our time. And it's really an opportunity for any city that wants to take that opportunity. Not only that, it's going to be at the state level, it'll be courthouses. I mean, there's going to be so much opportunity to use AI. Hey, before we go,
Mhm.
Don, I wanted to ask, could you just share one piece of advice that, you know, it came along in your career, you wish someone had shared it with you earlier, so that people can kind of glean something before you go?
Yeah, I would say, I would say do your best to let opinions of others not get to you. And I feel like that is a crippling thing for many people, right? So, meaning they don't do something because of this reason, that reason. Ultimately, what they're concerned about is failing, and that somebody else, like their family or their judgmental network of peers is some kind of how judge them. I would actually I would go on a limb to say that whatever you're trying to do that's got you afraid of other people's judgment is likely something that they themselves, those people that judge you, will not do or have not done. And I think that they find the courage in yourself to know that have God given talent and there's so much potential within you, that's just left, and you're not done. You are not done. And so I think that if you're listening to this, or you're following Dr. Helmut, is to love thyself and find purpose in your life. But it's really tough to do that when you're smothered in other people's opinions. So that's what I would tell them, is to free themselves from that. And I think they will find the ability to find self-awareness and love for themselves. Because I just feel like if you can't love yourself, it's really hard to love other people. And I know that's the premise of a lot of what you're doing, Dr. Helmet. And I think that that's what happened to me too. Outside of that, actually, that was the other story that I thought I was going to say, sort of before the sales one, was that getting to self-awareness, to self-reflect is to self-correct, you know, but to really self-reflect is so hard when it's noisy, and I'm like, what do they think? Are they gonna, how do they feel about this? It is about your audience, especially if you're a business or you're working for someone. Yes, you have a boss, but it really is about yourself. And you find that individualism, people will love you for who you are, for your genuine self, more than you think. And I think that that's the saddest thing. One of the saddest things in life is people that don't find that self-awareness and their uniqueness that makes them special because of that limitation. So forget about their opinions. They don't matter in the first place. And if you're thinking about doing that thing that you always, talked about for the last couple of years, do it right now. After you get out this meeting, you listen to, don't wait. Just do it. It's not going to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I mean, I changed my career at the height of my career to go become an entrepreneur. And yeah, there are some concerns about, like, how do people view me from being some global sales leader to now run an AI company? Like, what does this guy know? And I went on that same pursuit to say, you know what? Maybe I don't, but I'm going to figure it out. And then now, fast forward this time, I'm getting whatever, a bunch of awards and accolades for doing this because, my effort is not equal to someone else's judgment. They might say it's only been amount of time, but I can say, you don't know what I do at nighttime.
Hmm.
You know, you don't see what happens behind closed doors, right? You go to the gym one day, you walk in, 6 months later, you walk out and you're ripped. They don't know the amount of work you put in to do that. What you know is what you have within you. And that's all that matters. And so I think that that's what I would tell people. Because it's especially even for men, they just can't find the muster, the strength. And that's something I want to do someday, where I find men that are probably in their latter 20s that are lost, that really just need that encouragement to find their self-esteem and to find the light within them. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I love that. I will also add to that for those of you who are older. So,
Mhm.
like the self reflection, and then that self love, to then really build
Mhm.
yourself up and go. You're
Mhm.
100% right, and it's like you wish you could turn that light bulb on for everyone, right? Because you're like,
I
hey,
know,
this
man.
is the way forward.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
will I will say that as you age, and I'm in that place now, right? I'm 48, running for mayor, and there's a
Mhm.
certain point in your 40s, maybe it's in your 50s, I don't know, but there's
Mhm.
a point where all of a sudden you can start getting it's not only the self perspective, it's the we perspective. And all of a
Yes.
sudden you're thinking about, where's the tribe going, and what does the
Yes.
tribe need, and what are we manifesting? And then you
Mhm.
realize the leader in you has to become the leader of the we, because if
Mhm.
everyone's just you, right, it's like, why do we love
Mhm.
ourselves? To love one another, right?
Mhm.
And that's something, especially further on in life's journey, you realize that's something I can do now that I have all
Mhm.
this behind me, right? So
That's
thank you
it.
so much, Don, for joining. Such a great conversation. I look forward to working with you more, especially on the AI stuff.
Mhm.
wherever my path takes, I know that I will be having AI in it, and you'd be a great resource. How can people reach you, Don, if they
Yeah,
want
they
to
can find
reach
me
out?
on they can just search for me on LinkedIn. They can check out our website at highlandtech.ai, highlandtech.ai. And yeah, reach out if they have any questions. I mean, I'm based in the Atlanta area. I do a lot of local business, but I got customers on the other side of the world too. So don't hesitate to reach out. But appreciate what you're doing, Doctor. I think that your wealth of knowledge and charisma and just love. And so I'm supportive of what you're doing. I appreciate the hard work you're putting
All right.
into changing Atlanta for the better.
Thanks so much, Don. Thanks so much. Have a great one, y'all. I hope you all enjoy this episode. I love AI and I love the questions it asks. It's asking you the same questions. So I would ask you to think about this and think about what your role is going to be in a world that's going to be so swiftly changing. Are you going to be someone that reacts? Or are you going to be someone that centers yourself and responds with purpose? We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.